Oh my goodness, this FTC situation with Genshin Impact has just gone to show me that more people need to grow the heck up, touch grass, get in real relationships, and have some freaking kids so you can gain some perspective on what is actually going on here. Because I've been seeing some of the takes about what's going on and blaming the parents and saying this is a non-issue. And it's just crazy to me how much the brain rot has set in that you're willing to just gloss over some of these practices. And I want to go in and give my take on it. As a parent, I don't know if you guys know this, I actually have kids of my own, so these are things that I think about and I care about when it comes to the media they're consuming, the shows that they're watching, and making sure that they're, taking in content that is appropriate for them. And so when I see things like this taking place in the industry, I'm excited that we're putting in more protections for the children because, yeah, whether or not you care, it does matter. So for those who are a little bit confused as to what might be going on, Genshin Impact, the game developer, will be banned from selling loot boxes to teens under 16 without parental consent. Pay a $20 million fine and to settle with the FTC charges. Now, let's just call a few things out here that I think are interesting. $20 million in Cognisphere's case, honestly, that's really nothing. You're talking about less than a fraction of 1 month's revenue for the company as a whole. So I don't think they're going to be hurting anytime soon. I do think the one thing that actually is going to cause, hopefully, a little bit more friction for them, at least when it comes to Genshin Impact and specifically, is they're being banned from selling under the age of 16. With that being the case, I did go and check, and Genshin Impact is still currently rated for 12 plus on the App Store. So I am hoping that we do see that age rating get bumped up as well. ZZZ is already 16 plus. Honkai Star Rail is also 12 plus, and I do hope we see that get boosted as well, even as somebody who is a fan of the game. The other thing that I think is important to note here is they're not just specifically talking about children and just 16-year-olds, they're talking about other players as well, because ultimately what they ruled is a problem is that they're using deceptive language to sell to the consumer, so they don't actually know how much they're spending on the particular products. Now, we who play gacha games, and as somebody who enjoys gacha games, premium currency exists for two reasons. One, to obfuscate their actual dollar value, so you don't actually know when you're using some of that currency, how much money you're actually spending on that. And two, to keep it legal for underage gambling, essentially. Now, there are a lot of laws currently in place that forbid, online casinos from other in-game models. Like, you can't just actually go and any app or site just be able to have $1, per pull on a slot machine. So the way they get around that is they create premium currencies. You then use the premium currency to then pull on the slot machine. You're not allowed to have children be able to use a direct dollar to have a chance of winning something. There needs to be a direct conversion. And so you can then spend your dollars on the premium currencies, which are fixed values. You know what you're purchasing. There's no confusion there. And then you use the premium currencies to pull on the in-game slot machine. Let's make sure we're being clear here on what a gacha game is. It's a slot machine. That's how they monetize the game. I think having the transparency being pressed on these companies, to be pressed on Genshin Impact, as like that it is a game that is definitely more marketed towards children, that there needs to be that pressure for transparency, because having that transparency is always better for the consumer. It allows you to make a more educated spend and allows you to maybe prevent some negative things from taking place. Gambling is addictive. We're talking about gambling in a game here. So if we're having more protections put in place to stop more underage people from doing so, I think that's totally fine. Now, where I started to get really annoyed with the whole situation. So overall, positive. This is a positive thing. Guys, look, the government did something good. Wow, tax dollars at work. I'm Canadian. It's irrelevant to me in that way, but it will probably follow suit in Canada. But the part that really started to tick me off, I've started seeing more and more people commenting online, and I have nothing personally against Doro44, but I just think this has kind of been the focal point for a lot of this conversation and people coming into it. And Doro said, not to defend the multi-billion-dollar company, but aren't gacha mechanics explained in-game? If you're allowing your kids to spend your money in a gacha game, then that's just bad parenting. I'm not sorry. Now, the reason why I get so annoyed with the internet in so many cases is because this is a little more nuanced than Doro's just painting it out to be here. And again, Doro, if by some chance you see this, you probably won't. I've got nothing personally against you, but the black and white way that you've painted that just screams ignorance to me in this case. because you don't have kids and you don't know what that experience is like. And also when you're thinking kids, you're thinking of like the 9, 10-year-olds. You're not thinking about the 16, 17-year-olds, which, hey, newsflash, are still children. They're under the age of the majority. They don't have access to certain services because we've deemed them too young to be able to do things like that. And it's also marketed towards them as well. And they do have access to money. So I do want to be completely fair when we're talking about this here. There is some pressure and expectation that is placed on the parents. It is your job as a parent, and I can say this as a parent, it is your job as a parent to know what your kids are playing. It is your job as a parent to know what your kids are watching. And if you have certain values or certain things you want them to avoid, you don't want them to participate in, whether it be, something violent like Call of Duty or something predatory like Genshin Impact with the gacha mechanics, it is incumbent on you to know what your children are engaging with. That's right. That's real. There ain't no way around that. Welcome to being a parent. That is true. However, that is no excuse to then permit predatory practices by a company to still manipulate the entire player base. So while yes, we can still put responsibility at the feet of the parents here, we still need to put responsibility at the feet of the company. Why are we defending a multi-billion-dollar company that's exploiting dumb people and paying for these games? Now, I just wanted to briefly mention Gotcha Smack's tweet because I do like overall his approach and how he's talking about it and how people aren't taking into account that some parents just simply aren't educated on gaming in the gaming space. Talking about the average 35 parent in the world has no earthly clue what a gotcha game is even. Like, that is 100% true. As somebody who's in their 30s, I am 30 now, the number of people that I know that have never even heard of a gotcha game in their life is way more than the people who have. I could tell you that much. So of course, they're just not going to be as educated on the subject. That doesn't make it completely inexcusable here, because I'm not arguing that it's one side or the other, but it's a both and. For me, what I found most frustrating, and maybe I'm alone in this, but people are kind of like zeroing in thinking this is like 10 and 12-year-olds that mommy and daddy are just giving them their credit card, letting them spend as much as they want. And then now, hey, look, it's no big deal. And then the parents all of a sudden are mad because they realize that they've spent thousands of dollars on a glorified slot machine. I just don't think we're taking into account like the demographic of like literally the 15, 16-year-olds, because at least where I'm from, in the area that I live, there's a little bit more going on here. So what I said in replying to Mr. Pokey, I feel like this is another both and situation. 100%, if a child has access to a credit card in a gacha game, it is on the parent for enabling that. It might have happened by accident. It might have been not something of their intention. Like maybe the parent did load it onto their account one time to purchase a game for like the kid's Apple account, and it's still there. And now they're able to just literally go in and tap for purchases. It could have even been a mistake. You can blame the parents all you want, but things like that do happen, and they are innocent mistakes. Sometimes they're not, and it is just negligence. But we need to have more compassion for people in that situation. So again, blame is there for sure, especially when we're talking about preteens or younger. But for me, where my heart goes out to, and because I think about this because I think about the things that I got exposed to in my teen years, whether it was gacha games or otherwise, but just like kind of like adult content or whatever it may be. I'm thinking about the high schoolers who are still kids. I don't know what goes on in your head, but honestly, if you talk to high schoolers today, you realize how childish a lot of high schoolers are today. If you're a high schooler watching this, I'm no ill will. You're great. Feel free to just chill. But like, you're kids at the end of the day. A lot of kids, they will be having their first bank accounts or credit cards, like a $500 card. This is something that I got. I got a $500 credit card that was to be used to start building credit, and I had my first time job. So I did have access to some disposable income. If I had been placed in front of a virtual slot machine that was giving me all the anime waifus that I wanted, and I could play some of these games, you can darn bet I would have been starting to spend on those games. Because the way that they do that, the intentional psychological practices they use to manipulate you into spending and to separate you from the actual pain of purchasing, 100% that's going to happen. And somebody could start racking up debt. But beyond that, you're already building gambling habits in somebody who's not fully cognitively developed. And I just don't understand why we're defending this. To me, I think of it like other prohibited substances. That was a big nerdy freaking way of saying, like, for example, like alcohol. Alcohol exists. the vast majority of people aren't saying we need to ban alcohol forever, all the time, because it's dangerous. No, we've put certain safeguards and limitations in place to prevent the services being rendered to the children or to underage people who aren't able to handle it responsibly. And there's a lot of adults that can't handle it responsibly, but look, you got to draw a line somewhere. It's the same thing with these games. No one is saying gacha is not allowed to exist. But gacha should be transparent, shouldn't be allowed these weaselly tactics to manipulate you into spending or rate themselves as young as 12 plus to try and manipulate children into doing so. I just don't think, to me, it reeks of internet brain rot. And again, I'm not trying to like attack Mr. Pokey here or attack Doro specifically, because like, again, I've got nothing against those guys personally, but it's just, that's the sentiment that's being generally passed around. I want that to be clear here. We should almost always be on the side of making the multi-billion-dollar companies be more transparent. Why are we arguing against that? It's like people were trying to go for like brownie points online where they were like, oh yeah, dumb parents, it's so stupid. Give me a break. Go out, start a fucking family, realize what it's actually like to live in the real world, and then you can come talk about it. Cool? Cool. Sorry, I know I got a little bit angry with this one, but I always think it's crazy when I see people who don't have kids, who don't understand what that's like, saying stupid fucking statements. Sorry, I gotta stop. All right, peace.